Hi, everyone. Welcome to our next session. I am so pleased to introduce the speaker. He is the glue that holds the Ambit engineering team together. Victor Ronin is head of software architecture at Ambit. He has over 2 decades experience in the tech sector. He's made significant contributions prior to his work at Ambit at companies like Okta and Netscope. And beyond his professional 9-to-5 life, so to speak, he's co-authored several patents, actively engages with the tech community on Stack Overflow, and shares his insights on technology management and the evolving software landscape through his thoughtful blog posts on his Medium page and also on Ambit. Victor, what an absolute pleasure to have you here with us today. I'm going to go off stage now. Victor's going to talk to you, and then I will return for the Q&A with about 5 minutes left. Victor, take it away.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining. So again, my name is Victor Ronin. I'm software architect at Ambit, and today I will talk about stages of non-human identity maturity. Kind of just short agenda so you know what's coming. Pretty much I will talk a little bit about where do we stand as an industry. B, I will talk about kind of maturity stages, specifically kind of 7 stages plus a little bit of a bonus about IAM. And finally, kind of just there will be some closing thoughts, pretty much kind of where the whole our industry is moving, specifically kind of regarding NHI, how it will look like, and so on. And basically, kind of just even though the title of this speech says NHI, kind of non-human identity, I will talk a lot about access to. So, and as a result, kind of let's start. Pretty much, kind of let me talk a little bit about history. First of all, there was a long time ago, before 1990s, there was unauthenticated access era. It doesn't mean that all applications didn't authenticate to each other, but there was a lot of that. Pretty much kind of you had a classical perimeter, and within this perimeter, kind of applications were able to talk to each other without authentication. And after kind of when you move beyond 1990s, there was a custom authentication time when people kind of started to figure it out, use different protocols to authenticate. And by the way, as example, Kerberos 5 was introduced in 1995. Beyond that, you can see start kind of glimpses of NHI with Windows Service accounts in 2008. In 2010 to 2020, we are moving into standardization of authentication phase. As example, OS2 was introduced in 2012, which kind of right now is widely adopted. And kind of at that moment, people noticed that there are more and more secrets flying around to pretty much kind of to authenticate, you use a secret, and as a result, kind of the secrets were everywhere. It was a sprawl, and companies started to think about centralizing it. And as a result, kind of that's one of the first, probably most famous products around kind of the secrets management is HashiCorp Vault, was introduced in 2015, and it's kind of just widely adopted. And kind of going into the current decade, pretty much kind of secrets management applications started to integrate with platform identity, as example, with Kubernetes, with AWS, with Azure, and so on. And also you can see kind of just more applications relying on identity federations and to kind of just to tie different clouds together. And finally, kind of just right now, in the last several years, we are moving into NHI IAM world. And company started to recognize that there was a lot of different solutions. However, it's starting to kind of centralize around this IAM, and specifically kind of just how this path, which I'm talking about for non-human identity, we went through very similar transition through the user identity. And by the way, kind of a little bit later in the slides, I will talk more about it. But what I wanted also to show, kind of just different organizations are in different places. And some of them are stuck in the past, some of them are in the future, most of them are around secrets management. And however, it's interesting that kind of organizations in different places, but even teams are in different places. So as example, within your organization, maybe most of the teams use secrets management, but there was this one team which is stuck on some legacy software, which still does something differently, doesn't use secrets manager, just store secrets in environment variables. While some teams kind of already adopting, as example, IAM, or at least using secrets management with platform integration. That being said, let's dive in different stages of maturity. There will be multiple slides which will look like that. So first of all, at the top, it's stage, let's talk about unauthenticated access. On the left side, you will see the code. It's a Python, but the most important part, you don't have to know the Python. Here, we are just doing very simple HTTP call from a client application. This is a client application to a server. And if it's unauthenticated, in such case, you don't need to provide anything to authenticate. The application was simple. Please don't use any of the examples which I use in production. On the right side, I will show the problem which was introduced by such code, or if the code is improved, how we solve this problem. And the huge problem was like, hey, this such code without authentication, servers were open to any network access. So that's just how the unauthenticated access maturity stage looked like. The next thing which happened, obviously, engineers were thinking like, okay, we need authentication. Hooray, let's put authentication on the backend. And for a client, what we will do, we will just hard-code credentials in the code. So as a result, we add it into our headers, hard-coded credentials, use it into HTTP request. Yay, we solved that now applications are not open to any network access. However, it opened the whole Pandora box of different problems. Now, if the code is lost, somebody can steal these credentials. If somebody was able to go to your version control, they can steal credentials. Somebody who has access to the code, like insider thread, can get credentials. Pretty much, there was a whole set of things which can happen when the secrets will be leaked. By the way, there is right now OWASP NHI was just published a couple of weeks ago, and it's NHI OWASP number 2. And by the way, Andrew McCormick will talk more about just NHI OWASP. I think it's a fascinating topic, just having the real data behind it. Second part of this list, list of all different problems which this code may have, is its absence of controls. As example, when you have this, it's hard to rotate these action credentials. They are long-lived, they are time unbound. So as a result, you can replay attack, record this call and replay it and do something using that. And again, that's on NHI OWASP list. It's number 6, 7, 8, and 10. So as a result, this naive solution opened the Pandora box of different problems. And on one hand, especially if you're reasonably good with security and you're on top of engineering, you're like, no, people are not doing things like that anymore. Unfortunately, people do it, especially, again, let's say you're a big organization and you have a small team, some were working on some legacy code and engineers under pressure, and they will write such code. Basically, I don't blame them. I'm an engineer. I know how it works. There is pressure. You don't have the right tool available. So as a result, you use the tools which you have. It's a bad tool, but that's what quite often engineers just forced to do. So as a result, that's not the final stage. Obviously, everything moved forward. And the next step, the next stage of maturity was that companies started to put secrets into configuration. So instead of just putting it in the code, this secret now was put in the environment variable called API token. We read it from this environment variable, and we put it in the headers for a call. So the nice part about it, now we nicely solved just a couple of issues. One, now if somebody stole the code, either from your computer or version control, in such case, it doesn't contain credentials, so nobody can call that server application. On the other hand, there is still a long list of problems which remained from the list which we were just discussing. And as a result, the industry was marching forward toward the next stage, which was environment isolation. And kind of just basically kind of for everybody who is DevOps or Ops, kind of that will be super familiar. It's like, yes, you don't want development and production token be the same. So what happens, it kind of just take into account that we read this API token from an environment variable. Before it was the same token. Now we say, hey, for production, you will have a production token. For development, you have development token. The beautiful part about it, it doesn't solve completely insider threat, but it diminishes it significantly. Before you have 200 engineers which access the same token. Now you have 200 engineers who access dev token. And mainly, maybe only several people on ops department who can access production token. And at least kind of just if one of them leave, now you can rotate it without kind of just affecting 200 people. That being said, kind of still, the list of things to solve is long. And as a result, kind of industry was pushed forward, basically kind of industry is constantly pushed forward by number of these non-human identities and kind of just and applications and services and serverless and so on. That's kind of just, that was the main driver why kind of just it was pushed from one stage to another. So what happened next is different, pretty much companies started to kind of notice that there is a huge secret sprawl. That now secrets are in all kind of different places, in configuration file, environment variables. They are saved everywhere, sometimes in clear, sometimes encrypted. And companies started to try to figure out solution how you can kind of just manage it a little bit better because it was unmanageable. And there was a kind of just the whole industry popped up all from that kind of just doing secrets management. And from a code perspective, how it looked like, hey, now we don't read actually the token out of environment variable. We read this token from a secrets manager. Yay! The only problem is that to access secret manager, you need to authenticate to it somehow. And usually you are authenticating to the secrets manager using some master key. As a result, kind of just you take this master key, you go to secret manager, it will go give you a token, and now you're good. Obviously, kind of just ops needed to install the secret manager, so right now you have one more thing to manage. Secret managers solved a couple of things. Now you don't need to worry about hard to track secrets. Hey, your secrets in one place, so you know what they are. It's solved in secure deployments, which also helped that kind of just, in such case, your master key is somewhere and kind of just while deployment, you don't need to touch these keys anymore. And there was a kind of just things which left over which weren't solved, but also kind of it's interesting that it introduced new problem. The new problem is your master key, which is kind of secret zero. In the secrets manager because you need it to access secrets manager. And another thing which is reasonably new, and it's not like it was in kind of just it was introduced by secrets management software. It was all along over there. The only problem is that kind of just people weren't thinking about it before. Kind of just before it was like, yeah, somebody uses credentials, boo-hoo, that's fine. And kind of just when people started to put things into secrets managers, they're like, 1 second. So yes, now all secrets in one place. But as soon as I take it out of secrets managers, like, how do I know when it's used, who it's used? If it's leaked, how do I even know that? And just people start realizing like, okay, it's not enough just manage secrets. You need actually to understand that how it's used beyond being extracted from that secrets manager. So as I mentioned before, kind of, I think right now probably that's where our kind of just where most of the companies is. People kind of realize this problem. People kind of use secrets manager and so on. And however, kind of just industry moved forward, but now kind of just beyond it, you will see that kind of just adoption drops. Kind of this is widely adopted, but the next things will have less adoption than this. The next stage is separation of identity and access credentials, and it was happening almost at the same time, pretty much at the same time like secrets manager. So it's hard to even say stage 5 versus stage 6. They were happening almost in parallel. And the idea was that kind of in the past, if you have a secret, that's your access credentials to access something, but also it's your identity credentials. So your client application prove who it is by showing this secret. And that's kind of a problem, because if it's lost, in such case, you lost both access ability, but also you kind of just now somebody can spoof who this client application is. And protocols, there was multiple protocols which implemented this separation. One of the famous one is Auth2. And what it introduced kind of is separation between client identity, between identity credentials and access credentials. What it says, like, hey, there is a client ID and client secret, and that's pretty much kind of identity of your client workload. And we will take it from Secrets Manager, so it's in Secrets Manager, we get it, but we are not using them directly to access server. What we will do, we will go to Auth2 server, and we will say, here's identity, here is client ID, here's client secret, give me Auth2 token. So this will give you Auth2 token, and now you use this token to access your server. And the beauty of this kind of token that now it's short-lived, and kind of just even if it's lost, like it needs to be used in, let's say, 15 minutes, and after that, poof, it expires. So as a result, kind of the risks around access credentials became more manageable and mitigated, while kind of just the identity needs to be tightly controlled and secured. As usual, going to the list on the right, this separation solved a lot. I think it was somebody's great idea to put it together. Now we don't need to kind of just, we had a problem with it that it was hard to rotate access credentials. And now you don't have to, because they are short-lived. They are not long-lived anymore. Now, if somebody even record some call between client and server, it's time bound. So as a result, even if you was able to replay it in a day, nothing happens because that access credentials is expired already. Also, before there was very weak access control regarding all credentials, and this kind of allowed to introduce more stronger access control both in application and in Auth2 servers. That being said, again, as usually, continuing my list, there was quite a lot of issues left behind which weren't solved. And we got new issues introduced. Like separation is nice, but now you actually have a client secret and client ID, which is identity credentials. And it's hard to rotate them because you need to rotate them at the same time on the server, on the client, and they should do it at the same time. We should do it at the same time. They are long-lived. Quite often, these guys could be a half a year long, or in some cases, even kind of just live forever. Also, kind of just, even though we have access control in each server application, the problem is that we quite often don't have a centralized access control. You have a bunch of these applications running everywhere, your Salesforce, your, Microsoft Graph, each of them uses Auth2. Yes, and you can go and tweak access control for each of them, but you cannot go to some central place and do that. And kind of that kind of bring us to the next and kind of just final except bonus stage. Pretty much kind of what happened next is Secrets Manager started to integrate with platform identity. And the beauty of kind of just Kubernetes has a platform identity for each pod. AWS has platform identity for each EC2 instance and so on. And what Secrets Manager figured out that you can use master keys, you can use this identity instead of master keys. So you don't need it anymore in the code. Nicely solved Secret 0, didn't solve kind of just the rest of the problem. And before I dive into the last item, let me go in the brief detour. Pretty much kind of just, people are well aware about user identity and access management. You have central access policy management, identity lifecycle management, credentials lifecycle management, federation, audit, logs, MFA capability. I think this is familiar with practitioner. Let's talk about NHI. Let me click next slide. Oh, literally 2 words changed. Like now, instead of users, it's non-human systems and MFA-like capabilities. Everything else stayed the same. We will need the same solutions, just maybe with different technologies, but with the same solution. And literally nothing else changes. And that's kind of just pretty much kind of NHI non-human identity and access management will follow very, very similar paths to what user IAM followed. And it brings us kind of to a non-human identity and access management solution. That's how the code will look like when it's used with a non-human identity and access management. Pretty much kind of just, it will, all of this logic about authentication, about management secrets, about credentials, will be extracted into identity and access management system. And that kind of just will simplify tons and tons of things. Pretty much kind of, you get rid of problems with supply chain attacks. You don't kind of just all this kind of about credential usage kind of tracking goes to external system, which is IAM system. You don't need to worry about identity credentials rotations because you are not directly using them, and so on and so on. Pretty much kind of just the code collapses and becomes very small, and literally you cannot rob an empty house. Kind of there is nothing to steal here. Client applications will kind of just not have any credentials embedded or directly using it. And finally, kind of just the closing thoughts. I think we are on evolution. Kind of just we moved from no authentication, and right now we are on the fast track to use IAM solution. Pretty much the same thing like happened with user IAM. There is a shift in priorities. Before we kind of just, you have seen kind of a lot of things were pushed into the code, and we were trying to solve kind of engineers plus ops, DevOps were trying to solve it. Right now, it will be moved to kind of external services. For a long time, there was this guacamole game of like, hey, we're solving something, and 5 new issues will pop up. And on one hand, we will always have that. It's kind of just that's how security works. But on the other hand, I think kind of IAM creates this very nice platform which kind of solves it more uniformly. Again, like happened with user IAM. And finally, kind of while we are moving into this IAM era, it kind of helps to simplify a lot of this identity and access problems while greatly reducing engineering overhead. Again, engineers, so as a result for me, kind of just, it feels like it's obvious thing which engineers and basically kind of and ops people will love to have. That's going to conclude my talk, and we have probably about a couple of minutes left for to take several questions.
Yeah, thanks, Victor. Appreciate that. Who says you can't do a deep dive in 23 minutes? You covered a lot of info. That was amazing. For the audience who's watching, who maybe is curious about what stage they're in, what's the best kind of message that you would give to determine what your current stage is? Because they're probably dealing with like visibility issues. There's no standard metrics, systems, the ephemeral nature of NHI. So what would you tell them?
First of all, kind of just, there are very sophisticated ways to kind of just measure the stages and maturity of organization. The only thing that, for me, I'm a pragmatic person, it can take gazillion of hours to do that. The simplest way would be probably just to ask your engineering team literally kind of simple questions like, hey, do you have hard-coded credentials? Do you have a separation between identity and access credentials? Do you store secrets in secrets manager? Do you use underlying identity? Do you use IAM? So literally 5 questions. And send it to your teams, just ask them to kind of click 5 checkboxes and see, kind of just summarize this data and see where you are. Probably you can just spend, I don't know, 20 hours or 10 hours for even big organization and get a pretty good understanding. And again, kind of just, it's not like your organization will be in one place. Your teams will be all over the place and there will be a bell curve. but kind of middle of your bell curve is approximately where your organization is.
Right, and we had we had one question specifically to a stage question and kind of more technical, specific to the stage. We're going to respond back to you personally. We got to close soon, but in 10 seconds, how do you see the ownership of NHI managed, Victor?
Probably that will be mostly on security and on ops. I think developers will be gradually extracted out of it.
Okay. Amazing. To any questions we didn't get to, we'll respond back to you. Thank you, Victor. And
thank you, everybody.
We'll see you all at the next session.
Sounds good. Thank you.